Welcome back. We are now on to day 3 of Unit 3. So we're still talking about nutrition and mainly the digestive system. So today's aim is how do living things acquire the energy necessary to maintain homeostasis? So there are a few things that we need to annotate here. The first thing is energy. So today when we're talking about energy, we're going to be talking about cellular energy, mainly ATP. So this is that energy that's produced by the mitochondria through a process called cellular respiration. Right. And the second thing you need to annotate is this word homeostasis. I told you guys you would see it a lot this year. This is probably what, your 3,000th time seeing it, and you're going to see it 12,000 more before the end of the year. So homeostasis, as you should remember, is a stable internal environment. So we want to keep things stable and steady. All right, so you've got 2 do now questions. I want you to pause this video, answer questions 1 and 2, and then press play when you're ready to go over it. So question number 1 says, organisms contain compounds such as proteins, starches, and fats. The chemical bonds in these compounds can be a source of what? Is it amino acids, simple sugars, energy, or enzymes? So it's not going to be A because amino acids are specific to just proteins. And here we're talking about protein, starches, and fats. It's not going to be simple sugars because those are specific to starches or carbs. It's not going to be enzymes because enzymes are just a type of protein. So the answer here is C, energy, because these chemical bonds are where energy is stored. So when our body breaks them down or digests them, we get energy. All right, number 2, increased concern over the number of heat, this should say related illnesses, among football players has led to a possible change in uniform design. Shoulder pads were designed that constantly blew cool, dry air underneath the shoulder pads. Tests showed that the use of the device during rest and recovery periods resulted in a reduction of body temperature and heart rate. This new device would help the athlete to control the rate of muscle activity, increase muscle strength, maintain homeostasis, or eliminate the release of heat from the body. So the answer here is also going to be C, maintain homeostasis. So specifically, we'll be maintaining a stable internal body temperature. So stable body temperature is the goal of these heat shoulder pads. So by blowing in that cool air, we're hopefully going to lower their body temperature and help them maintain homeostasis. All right. So again, we are talking about the digestive system, but I want us to quickly review some of the main organs that are involved in digestion. So some of these you already know, some of them are going to be new, but we're going to go through them together. So please be familiar with where these organs are located on the digestive system. You might have to use some diagrams in the future to identify where different organs are. Just a thought. Okay, so what are the functions of these organs? The very first one we're going to cover is the mouth. Now, I hope you know where your mouth is on your body, but if you don't, it would be found right here. And the function of the mouth is going to be, it partakes in both chemical and mechanical digestion. Right. So it partakes in chemical digestion because the enzymes in the saliva break down starch. And it partakes in mechanical digestion because when you use your teeth to chew food, you're breaking down that food. Okay, so both chemical and mechanical digestion. Those enzymes are chemically breaking down starch, and your chewing is mechanically breaking down any food you place in there. All right. Next up, we've got the esophagus. Now, you will find your esophagus as this long tube that connects your mouth and your stomach. And its function is just that. Its function is that it connects the mouth and the stomach. Right? And it's able to push food down or bring food down through the esophagus through those muscle contractions we talked about called peristalsis. Next up, we've got the stomach. So you'll find your stomach right here. Okay, and what's the function of your stomach? Well, it also partakes in both chemical and mechanical digestion. All right, but it's going to look a little bit different than it does in the mouth. So here, that chemical digestion is going to be stomach acid and enzymes that break down protein. And that mechanical digestion is going to be something we call churning, which basically means that food is mixed in your stomach. And when it's mixed, it's super physical and it breaks down that food even further. So churning, mixing, breaks down food. So I think I told you guys yesterday, whenever I hear the word churning, I think of like churning butter in like colonial times. That's basically what churning in your stomach is. It mixes up that food and breaks it down even further. All right, next up, we've got the liver. Now we haven't actually talked about the liver yet, but you will find your liver right here. Now, I do want to clarify, no food actually passes through your liver. And so because of that, we call the liver an accessory organ. Okay, and accessory organs, I want you to know that no food actually passes through them. They just help out with digestion by producing or secreting enzymes or bile. Okay, so accessory organs help out with digestion kind of from the sidelines. So they're not actively breaking down that food. No food passes through them. They are not digesting food, but they help out with the process of digestion by producing or secreting enzymes or bile that aid with digestion. And the liver is an example of an accessory organ. Okay, so the function of the liver that you need to know is that it produces, so it creates and secretes, which means release. It produces and secretes bile. Okay, and that bile is going to help break down fat. So again, no food passes through the liver. The liver is just there to help out by producing and secreting bile. All right, next up, we've got the small intestine. I'll do that in this lovely orange color. You'll find the small intestine right here. All of these inner squiggles are going to be the small intestine. Now, we've talked about the small intestine before, but its main job is it partakes in nutrient absorption. Okay, so the small intestine is also going to break down lipids or fats. But its main job is that it's going to absorb all of those nutrients that your body needs. Okay, next up is the large intestine. So your large intestine is going to be this outer intestine right here. And its main job is water absorption. So the large intestine partakes in water absorption. So your large intestine is what determines how much or how little water is present in your feces. So if you ever are constipated or you have diarrhea, your large intestine is kind of to blame for that, because that is what regulates how much water is reabsorbed by your body or how much is let go in your waste. And finally, the last thing we need to talk about is the rectum. Okay, and your rectum can be found right here. And your rectum is the site of waste storage. And when we say waste, we basically mean anything that your body didn't absorb. So any nutrients or materials not used in digestion. Okay. So your rectum is where all of those wastes are stored until your body is ready to release them. And then they're released by the anus. All right, so those are the organs that you guys need to be familiar with for your digestive system. So make sure you know what their job is and where they're located along the digestive tract. So next up, we're going to be talking about our old friend, the mitochondria, and specifically a process it does called cellular respiration. And remember, this is the process that it uses to create ATP or energy. So this is a long passage, so I'm going to take a sip of water before I embark on this journey. Feel free to hydrate as well. So as I read through this paragraph, I want you guys to highlight any important information on your paper and then write down the answers as we go along. All right, so the role of the mighty mitochondria. All living things require energy. Ooh, that is red. I'm not red. All living things require energy, but how do living things acquire the energy necessary to maintain homeostasis? Most cells get energy in one of two ways, from food molecules or from the sun. Food provides living things with the chemical building blocks they need to grow and reproduce. Food serves as a source of raw materials from which the cells of the body can synthesize new molecules. Nearly all eukaryotic cells, including plants, contain mitochondria. Mitochondria are organelles, structures within a cell, that convert the chemical energy stored in food into compounds that are more convenient for the cell to use. This process of creating energy occurs as a result of a process known as cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is a process that releases energy by breaking down food molecules in the presence of oxygen. So number one is explain how the mitochondria is involved in the release of energy. Okay, so I want you guys to note that the mitochondria undergo cellular respiration. Okay, and when they undergo cellular respiration, they take in glucose and oxygen and turn it into ATP. And that ATP is going to be known as cellular energy. Right, so what is the actual formula of cellular respiration? I do want you guys to go ahead and write this down because it will come up many times. Okay, so cellular respiration takes in oxygen, or O2, and glucose, C6H12O6. And in that process, it actually ends up producing CO2, water, and ATP. So we will talk about this more, but please make sure you actually write that formula down. You will need to be familiar with it. Okay, so let's move on. Introduction to cellular respiration. Autotrophic organisms such as plants and algae can trap the energy in sunlight through, oh no. This always seems to happen. Please still be there, fingers crossed. Okay, I'll take it. We only lost a little bit. Autotrophic organisms such, oh my word. Here we go. One more time. Autotrophic organisms such as plants and algae can trap the energy in sunlight through the process of photosynthesis and store it in the chemical bonds of carbohydrate molecules. The carbohydrate formed through the process of photosynthesis is known as glucose. Other types of heterotrophic organisms, such as animals, are unable to synthesize their own nutrients and therefore rely on the carbohydrates formed in plants. This means that heterotrophs must eat plants and other animals in order to obtain the energy necessary for their metabolic processes. So question 2 says some organisms produce or perform photosynthesis to produce glucose, while other organisms, such as heterotrophs, cannot undergo the process of photosynthesis. What must heterotrophic organisms do in order to obtain energy? So heterotrophic organisms, like animals, have to eat other organisms to gain energy. Okay, and those other organisms that we're going to eat can be plants or animals. Okay. Number 3, animals and other organisms obtain the energy available in carbohydrates through the process of cellular respiration. What is the purpose of cellular respiration, and why is it essential to the survival of a species that cannot synthesize their own food? So there's 2 things you need to answer here. The first thing is cellular respiration. What's the purpose of it? So cellular respiration converts chemical energy stored in food, namely glucose, into compounds that the cells can use. And that compound that the cell can use is ATP. Okay, and why is this essential? Why does this have to happen? Well, it's necessary because since we cannot utilize the energy found in the sun, we have to get our energy from somewhere else. So we rely on other organisms to provide us with the raw materials like glucose needed to synthesize our own energy. And of course, our own energy is ATP. All right, so that is a long way of basically saying because we can't create our own energy using the sun, or I'm sorry, because we can't create our own food using the sun, we have to rely on other organisms to give us the glucose that we need to create our own energy through ATP. All right, finally, this last paragraph says cells take in glucose and through a complex series of metabolic processes, the mitochondria will release the energy in the form of a molecule known as adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. The ATP produced can then be used for processes in the cell that require energy, such as a battery powers a mechanical device. During the process of cellular respiration, carbon dioxide, water, and ATP are produced. Plant cells can then utilize the products of respiration to begin the process of photosynthesis. Okay, so question 4 says, how is glucose involved in the process of photosynthesis? Well, glucose is used by the mitochondria to produce ATP. And of course, ATP, as I hope we know by now, is energy. So glucose is used by the mitochondria to produce ATP, or energy. Number 5, what are the products of cellular respiration, and identify one molecule that is used to store the energy being released during the process of photosynthesis. So the products of cellular respiration are what is produced by this process, which we saw right here. So carbon dioxide, water, and ATP are produced. Okay, so the products are carbon dioxide, water, and ATP. And what is one molecule that is used to store the energy released during the process of cellular respiration? Well, that molecule is ATP. That is the molecule that's giving us energy. So ATP is used to store energy. Okay. So again, I do want to write down the formula of cellular respiration, just in case you didn't get it the first time. Let's talk about it again. Okay, so cellular respiration takes in oxygen and glucose to produce CO2 water, and ATP. Okay, now I do want to draw some attention to this last sentence we saw right here. Plant cells can then utilize the products of respiration to begin the process of photosynthesis. So that means that whatever is produced by respiration can then go in to start photosynthesis. So I'm going to also write down the formula for photosynthesis, which we're actually not going to talk about for a few more days, but I'll give you guys a head start. The process of photosynthesis takes in carbon dioxide, sunlight, and water to produce oxygen and glucose. So you may notice then that the products of photosynthesis go straight into cellular respiration, and the products of, how can I explain this? Okay, the products of cellular respiration go into photosynthesis, and the products of cellular respiration go into, I just said that completely wrong. I'm having a stroke, guys. The products of photosynthesis then go into start cellular respiration, and the products of cellular respiration then go into start photosynthesis. So let me clarify this diagram because that is all sorts of confusing. It's time for me to go home. All right, let's do it like this. I don't think that's any better. That is literally quite possibly worse. But I'm just gonna erase those arrows and hopefully you guys will see that connection. We'll talk more about this in the upcoming days and I'll give you guys a better diagram because that clearly is not it. But I want you guys to use this information that you used to complete the exit ticket. There are 2 questions for you today. So use this information, answer that exit ticket question, and have a wonderful afternoon. I will see you guys tomorrow.